The year was 1866, and the frontier was a land of both opportunity and death. A dry wind blew over the scrubland, lifting dust like smoke from a battlefield. That same wind carried the smell of sun-baked earth, sweat, and old regret. Something Cole Maddox had grown too familiar with. He shifted on the wagon bench, his back sore from chopping timber and his throat parched enough to swallow sand. His mule, Betsy, let out a tired grunt, ears twitching under the weight of flies. Cole wasn't much to look at. Tall, rangy, and leathered by sun and time. He wore the same threadbare shirt he'd had through 2 failed seasons of ranching and 1 long, bitter winter. His eyes were the kind you didn't meet twice, gray, sharp, and a little haunted. He'd once been a man of plans and promises. Now he was a man of silence and small, painful victories, like getting a broken fence post to stay upright in rocky soil. The road wound through a stretch of valley he didn't frequent. Not since the land wars. Not since the railroad cut through the heart of the territory and sold off parcels like candy to Eastern men in clean boots. He hated this road, this valley, and all the ghosts riding it with him. It was mid-afternoon when he saw the smoke. Thin at first, rising behind a cluster of cottonwoods near the creek bend. Smoke out here could mean fire, or it could mean trouble. His hand found a rifle beside him. Betsy slowed, ears perked. He clucked the reins. "Go on, girl." They rounded the bend and came upon the wreck. A wagon had gone down hard. Axle snapped clean, while half buried in a rut of dry mud. One horse was dead, neck broken under the yoke. The other, a chestnut mare, stamped and snorted, still tethered, panicked but not injured. Luggage lay strewn across the bank like a gutted animal. And kneeling in the dirt, skirts muddied, one hand on the wagon frame and the other holding a hammer with no hope of fixing what was broke, was a woman. She looked up as he approached, eyes narrow, jaw set. "Keep your distance," she barked. Cole raised both hands, rifle still slung, but pointed skyward. "Ain't looking for trouble, ma'am. Just saw the smoke." Her hair was pinned in a neat bun. Those stray curls had broken free and clung to her face. The dress she wore might have once been fine. Eastern cut, cinched waist, but now it bore the marks of hard travel and grit. Her hands weren't calloused, but they were scraped from effort. "Do I look like I need help?" "You look like your wagon's broke and your horse is dead." "That about right." She stood slowly, back stiff, chin high. "I was handling it." Cole stepped closer, careful. "You plan on dragging that will back on with willpower alone." She eyed him like a rattler might eye a boot, but her lips parted just slightly. "A crack in the armor." "I have tools," she said. "I've got a jack, some bolts, and 2 good hands. Better than tools without know-how." She considered him for a long beat, then nodded once. "All right, but I'm watching you. Wouldn't expect less." He tied Betsy to a nearby post and fetched his gear. As he worked, she hovered, close enough to guard, far enough to keep her pride. He didn't press her with questions. Not yet, but he watched her as much as she watched him. She stood with weight on her left leg, favoring a limp she tried to hide. Her left glove had a tear, revealing pale skin beneath. Her accent was mid-Atlantic, maybe Boston, softened by weariness. "You're not from around here," he said, tightening a bolt. She glanced at him, eyes sharp. "No." "Headed where?" "To what's mine." He raised a brow. "And that would be—" She tilted her chin at the horizon. "Hayes Claim, by the southern ridge." He paused. "That land hasn't been touched in years." "It will be." Cole wiped sweat from his brow. "You're Mrs. Hayes, then?" "I am." He didn't say the name out loud again, but it rang in his head like church bells. Eleanor Hayes, the widow. Her husband had been a wealthy man, one of those railroad men who came out west promising towns and trade and left behind blood. Word was he died sudden. Word was his land grant stretched over half the valley. Cole grunted and went back to work. The wheel was salvageable with some ingenuity. Took over an hour to set the jack, splice the axle, and brace the undercarriage with lengths of timber. She offered him water from a metal flask, warm but clean. "You don't ask many questions," she said, almost surprised. "Don't like when folks ask me any." They stood in silence as the sun dipped lower. Coyotes howled in the distance. "You planning on staying out here overnight?" he asked. I hadn't planned on breaking down. I got jerky and beans in my wagon. If you don't mind eating with a stranger. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but I cooked the beans. They ate by firelight, smoke curling between them like a barrier neither wanted to cross. Cole noticed she cleaned her spoon with precision, tucked her skirts modestly even when no one else was around. She wasn't just traveling. She was proving something. Why go back to the Hayes claim? He asked. No one else dared touch it. Because it's mine, because my husband died for it, and because I won't be run off. He respected that. More than he said. She didn't ask his story, and he didn't volunteer. Some silences were sacred. Later, when the fire had dimmed and the stars came out like scattered bullets, she rolled out a blanket near her wagon. Cole set his back to a tree, rifle across his lap. Just in case. You always this careful? She asked from the shadows. Only when there's reason to be. What reason do you see now? He didn't answer. Not out loud. But he saw it in the way her hand stayed close to the hammer, even in sleep. In the way she didn't flinch from danger, only from kindness. They both drifted into a restless quiet. But somewhere in the hills, above the creek bend, another fire burned. A man watched through a spyglass, face half hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. He chewed on a twig and spoke low to the man beside him. That's her, Eleanor Hayes, the widow, and the fellow with her. Doesn't matter. He's in the way. The other man cocked his rifle. You want her dead? No, not yet. Silas says we wait. Let her find the deed. Then we strike. The fire crackled as the men faded into the dark, leaving only ashes and threat behind. Morning came cold and gray. Dew clung to the grass. Cole was already up, checking the wagon wheel, satisfied it held through the night. Eleanor emerged with her hair tied tighter, her expression unreadable. Thank you, she said, eyes down. He nodded. You still headed south? I am. He looked toward the trail, then back at her. Then I'll go with you, at least to the ridge. She stiffened. I can manage. I don't doubt that. But the trail ain't safe. You've got something folk want. Do you? No, ma'am. I just fix what's broken. Something passed between them then. Not warmth. Not yet. But a pause. A shift in air. They hitched the remaining horse to the wagon and loaded what supplies they could. As they rolled on, the valley stretched wide and quiet ahead, but neither of them felt peace. Not when unseen eyes followed them from behind the rocks. Not when the air held the taste of gunpowder and old grudges. And not when a man named Silas greedily scrawled Eleanor Hayes' name on the back of a wanted poster. Unofficial, but no less lethal. In the West, sometimes death came with a bullet. Sometimes it wore a badge. And sometimes it came with a handshake and a contract. Cole didn't know what he'd gotten tangled in, but he knew this much. When you fix a wheel, you set things in motion. And some things, once moving, can't be stopped. The land changed as they drew closer to the southern ridge. What had once been scrub and rocks softened into rolling acres of grassland, dry and brittle from a hard summer, but rich in promise. There were fence posts weathered gray with age, leaning like old men. The remnants of a gate hung crooked on rusted hinges. Wind tugged at the tall grass, whispering through the emptiness like the voice of someone long dead. Eleanor kept her eyes forward, spine straight, one hand gripping the side of the wagon bench. The morning sun caught the edge of her profile, sharp, unyielding. She had not spoken much since dawn, but Cole felt the storm gathering inside her. Every mile brought her closer to something, either reckoning or ruin. You sure this is the right place? He asked finally. She nodded without looking at him. I studied my husband's maps 100 times. This is the edge of the Hayes land. What's left of it? Cole scanned the horizon. Used to be a ranch house out here. I remember it. Big place, too. It burned, she said flatly. 3 years ago. He didn't press further, but her fingers, white-knuckled on the wood, spoke volumes. They crested a rise, and there it was, a charred foundation surrounded by wild thistle. The chimney still stood, blackened like old teeth. A well remained near the rear, stones sunk deep, capped with rusted iron. To the left, a grave marker. Weather-worn. Simple. Eleanor dismounted and walked straight to it. Cole hung back, giving her space. She knelt by the headstone, brushing off dust with the edge of her glove. It bore a name, barely legible. Thomas Hayes. Gone too soon. May God grant peace where men did not. Her lips parted, but no words came. She simply rested her hand on the stone for a long while. When she rose, her face was unreadable again. She turned and called out, "We build here. The well's clean, and the land's ours. This is where I begin again." Cole nodded once, then glanced over his shoulder. A crow circled high above them, calling once before diving down toward the trees. Cole didn't like it. Didn't like how quiet the land was, how empty the sky felt despite the sun. There was a weight here, not just from grief, but from things left undone. They worked through the day. Cole set up a small lean-to from salvage boards and canvas, while Eleanor sorted supplies. She moved with sharp efficiency, but there was something driven in it, as if stopping might allow grief to catch up. Mid-afternoon, Cole was cutting timber from a nearby grove when he heard hoofbeats. He turned fast, axe in one hand. A rider emerged from the trees. Young, maybe 20, tall in the saddle, with a lean frame and shaggy blonde hair beneath a bowler hat. His clothes were too fine for a drifter, the kind that spoke of city money trying to play frontier hard. He smiled as he approached. "Afternoon." Cole straightened, wary. "You're far off any road, friend." The stranger dismounted, dusting off his lapel with exaggerated flair. "I like the quiet. Don't get much of that in town." Eleanor came into view, rifle across her arms. The man's smile broader. "Well now, you must be Mrs. Hayes. Been waiting for you to show up." Cole's eyes narrowed. "You know her?" "Not formally," the man said, bowing slightly. "But word gets around when a widow inherits half a valley. Name's Everett Sloan. I represent Silas Greeley." That name hit like a hammer to the gut. Eleanor's voice was cold. "Greeley's a thief." Everett chuckled. "Now, that's unkind. Silas just does what's best for business. The railroad needs this land. And you've come out here with a broken wagon, a mule, and a hired hand. What do you really think you can do against a man like him?" "I'm not selling," she said. Everett raised a brow. "You haven't seen the deed yet. I have my husband's will, which doesn't account for recent changes in regional claims. Greeley's lawyer filed paperwork in Fort McGraw. State says the Hayes claim lapsed when Thomas died without an heir in residence. I'm his wife, not in the eyes of the territory. You weren't here. You were back east, weren't you?" "Mornin'." Cole stepped closer. "You'd best be moving along." Everett smiled again, but his eyes cooled. "I'd think twice about throwing in with her, mister. Greeley's not fond of interruptions." Cole stared him down. "I ain't fond of cowards." Everett's jaw clenched. He swung onto his horse with a practiced ease. "Suit yourselves. Just know that come end of the month, surveyors are set in stakes. Railroad owns everything south of the ridge, on paper and in powder." He tipped his hat mockingly and rode off. Dust settled behind him like smoke. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly on the rifle. "He's lying." Cole watched the horizon. "He might be, but men like Greeley don't bluff often." "I won't be run off," she said again, teeth clenched. "No," Cole agreed, "you won't." That night, the wind howled through the broken chimney like a choir of ghosts. They slept light, rifles close. A coyote slinked into camp just before dawn and sniffed around the ashes. Cole scared off with a shot, but it unsettled them both. They spent the next week building. Every day was sweat and splinters. Cole cut logs and hauled stone while Eleanor cleared the land and rebuilt the garden beds with dry, cracked hands. She planted seeds without ceremony, turned the soil like it owed her something. Sometimes she spoke to herself under her breath. Names, memories, maybe prayers. Cole didn't pry. One morning, she found an old tin box buried behind the barn ruins. Inside was a yellowed letter, a deed, and a sketch map. She read it in silence, then handed it to Cole. He scanned the lines. The letter was from Thomas Hayes, written 2 weeks before his death. It referenced a hidden ledger, proof of Greeley's land fraud, stashed in the roots of the second elm west of the well. The deed had a signature and seal that predated Greeley's filings. Cole looked up. "You think this is real?" Eleanor's eyes were steel. "I know my husband's hand. They searched the grove that afternoon. found the elm, scarred with an old knife mark, and dug until roots gave way to a metal lockbox. Inside was a leather-bound ledger, brittle but intact. Cole whistled low. This could hang a man. It'll do more than that, she whispered. It'll bury him. But they weren't the only ones watching. 2 nights later, someone tried to burn the wagon. Cole caught the fire before it spread, but the smell of kerosene and the fresh boot prints told the tale. They were being watched. Hunted. We moved the ledger, he said. Hide it somewhere they won't look. Eleanor nodded. I know a place. At sunrise, they rode east along the riverbank and stashed the box in a crumbling mine shaft under loose rock. When they returned, the well had been poisoned. A dead rabbit floated in the bucket. Black oil shimmered on the water's surface. Cole cursed under his breath. They're not playing games anymore. We weren't, either, Eleanor said. Her eyes burned with fury now, but underneath was fear. Not for herself, he realized. For something more. That night, she finally told him. I wasn't just in Boston, she said softly. I was in mourning, yes. But also, I was hiding. Cole looked at her, waiting. My husband didn't die of fever like they said. He was shot. In the back. He had documents meant for the state auditor. He knew Greeley's plans. He meant to expose them. The night before he left to testify, someone came to our door. I was upstairs. I heard him fall. I never saw the shooter. Cole's voice was low. You think Greeley sent him? I know it. She turned to the fire, the shadows long across her face. I came west because I couldn't live with doing nothing. Not just for my husband. For the truth. For what's ours. Cole said nothing for a while. Then he reached over and added wood to the fire. We finished the house, he said. We staked the claim. We ride to Fort McGraw together. Deliver the ledger ourselves. She met his gaze. That's suicide. He shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe it's justice. In the distance, thunder rolled. But the skies above were clear. Morning came with the sound of hooves, dozens of them. Cole and Eleanor scrambled from their bedrolls. On the ridge, silhouettes formed. Riders. Armed. A voice called down, Mrs. Hayes. You've got until sundown to leave, or we'll come down and clear you out ourselves. Cole stepped forward. Tell Greeley he'll have to come himself. Laughter echoed. Then silence. Eleanor looked up at the house they'd half built, at the fields she'd replanted, at the grave with her husband's name. Then she looked at Cole. We finish it, she said. He nodded. Ain't got another choice now. They went back to work. Hammered boards, filled water from stream barrels, sharpened tools and loaded rifles. Around them, the land breathed. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not undone. And somewhere, beneath the soil and the silence, the truth waited to rise. The wagon wheels shrieked as they cut a hard line across the shale, every jolt threatening to toss their cargo. Wind howled between the crags of Devil's Pass like a thing alive, a banshee screaming down from the peaks, shaking loose rock and snow from ledges above. Cole held the reins tight, sweat beading on his brow despite the cold. The mules strained against their harnesses, nostrils flaring white in the chill, hooves slipping on the narrow switchback trail carved into the mountain's ribs. Behind him, Eleanor clutched the lockbox wrapped in oilcloth, hidden beneath her skirts. She'd sewn a pouch beneath her petticoat to keep it close. That ledger, pages of names, bribes, land grabs, dates, was now more than proof. It was a powder keg, and they carried the match. Careful, she shouted as the wagon lurched dangerously toward the edge. Below them, the gorge yawned open, 1,000 feet of broken stone and death. I see it, Cole barked, yanking the reins hard. Damn mules are nervous. They're not the only ones. She glanced behind them. No dust yet. No riders in pursuit. But it wouldn't last. They'd slipped out just before dawn, taking only what they could carry. Left the homestead half-finished, the fields unplanted. The riders had returned at sunrise, guns drawn, looking to force their hand. Instead, they found empty ground and boot tracks headed north. The plan was simple. Reach Fort McGraw by way of Devil's Pass, hand over the ledger to the territorial judge, and expose Silas Greeley before his men could silence them for good. But nothing about the land was simple. Devil's Pass was cursed country. Folks said even the Comanche didn't camp here. The wind carried voices that weren't real, and travelers vanished without a trace. Cole didn't believe in curses, but he believed in ambushes. And this trail was as good a place as any to get killed. The wagon groaned again as they rounded a sharp bend. Loose gravel skittered off the edge and fell away into nothing. Eleanor's knuckles were white where she clutched the frame. Her face was drawn, pale with cold, but she didn't complain. She hadn't since they'd left. There was something grim and quiet in her now, like she'd burned through fear and come out the other side forged. "We'll need to stop soon," she said. "The mules are fading." Cole nodded, eyes scanning the cliffs. "Another mile. There's a cut ahead. Used to be a prospector's camp. We can shelter there." As they climbed higher, the pass narrowed, shadows stretching long between the crags. The sun touched nothing here. It was a world of stone and ice and silence, broken only by the creak of the wagon and the wheeze of the mules. Finally, they reached the outcropping. A hollow cut into the cliffside offered shelter from the wind. The remnants of an old fire pit remained, half buried beneath snow. Cole set to unhitching the mules while Eleanor pulled out the rifle and kept watch. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "If something happens to us, if they catch us, I want you to take that ledger. Ride hard. Don't look back." "No," he said simply. She turned to him. "Cole, no." He unhitched the second mule, patting its neck. "I didn't come all this way to turn tail at the finish. You started this with guts and grit no one gave you credit for. I'll see you finish it the same way." She looked at him a long moment. "Then let's promise each other something. Name it. If one of us falls, the other doesn't quit." His mouth twitched. "Reckon that's fair." They set a small fire with what would remain from the old camp. Cole warmed beans in a tin pot, while Eleanor studied the map Thomas had drawn years ago, trying to gauge how far they'd come. "We'll reach the Lowland Trail tomorrow," she murmured. "By nightfall, Fort McGraw. If we're lucky," he said. He didn't say the rest aloud, that they might be found before then. That riders with Greeley's coin in their pocket were likely closing in even now. That night, sleep came in fits. The fire crackled low. Somewhere above, rock tumbled from a ledge, echoing like distant thunder. Cole sat up, rifle across his lap, senses alert. And then he heard it, the clink of metal, faint but unmistakable. He stood fast, nudging Eleanor awake with a whisper. "Riders!" She was up instantly, clutching her rifle. They extinguished the fire and crouched in the dark, breath shallow, eyes straining toward the path. The moon cast silver light across the stone, and there they were, 3 figures on horseback, pausing at the bend. One dismounted, checking the ground. Tracking. Cole pulled Eleanor deeper into the cut, behind the rocks. He motioned to the far side, where a narrow goat path dropped down toward a dry ravine. She nodded. They left the wagon, slipped out the back with their packs and the ledger, and made their way down, inch by inch, boots sliding on ice. Above them, a voice cursed. Then another. They found the trail, Cole muttered. They ran. The ravine led into a dry creek bed, which curved sharply east toward the foothills. The land flattened, dotted with mesquite and scrub oak, the air warming with every step. By dawn, their legs were burning, throats raw. But they hadn't stopped. Couldn't. They reached a narrow gully where water once ran, now dry and cracked. Cole paused, panting. "We'll rest here." Half hour. Eleanor leaned against a rock, brushing damp hair from her face. "They'll be right behind." "Let him come," he said, drawing his rifle. "This spot's got cover. Narrow approach. We hold here." She unslung her own weapon, checked the chamber. "You planning to die here, Cole?" "No, ma'am. I'm planning to give you a head start if I have to." She looked at him for a long time, jaw working. "You're a damn fool." He grinned. "So I've been told." They didn't have to wait long. The first rider appeared around the bend, rifle raised. Cole fired once, sharp and clean, and the man toppled from the saddle. The second rider dismounted, taking cover behind a boulder. Gunfire cracked, echoing through the gulch. Eleanor fired next, her shot hitting stone and sparking. "Flank right," Cole called. She moved, crouching low, sliding along the edge of the rock wall. Another bullet tore through the air near her shoulder. Cole drew fire from above, firing twice more. Then silence. Dust rose. A bird cried overhead. And then a voice. Lay down your arms. Everett Sloane stepped into view, hat low, gun drawn. Eleanor's breath caught. Cole stepped out from cover, rifle still in hand. Should have known Greeley'd send his lapdog. Everett sneered. This ain't personal, Marshal. It's business. You got no badge to call me that. You gave it up, I heard. After the Tucker ferry fire. How many died, Cole? 4? 6? Cole's grip tightened. Don't test me. Everett raised his hands. Don't want blood. Just the ledger. Hand it over, and you walk. Eleanor stepped out behind him, rifle aimed steady. You know we can't do that. Everett looked at her. You think anyone in Fort McGraw's gonna listen to you? Greeley owns that town. The judge. The sheriff. Even the church bell was paid for with his money. I'll take my chances. He shook his head. Then you're both already dead. He reached for his pistol. Cole fired first. The shot rang out, and Everett crumpled. Another rider charged the ridge. Cole turned, shot again. The silence after was deafening. Blood darkened the dust. Eleanor lowered her rifle. Cole exhaled. Let's ride. By midday, they reached the trail leading down into the lowlands. The landscape rolled out before them. Open, green, distant smoke rising from cook fires and chimneys. Fort McGraw lay ahead, but with it a new danger. They reached the outskirts by dusk, faces drawn, clothes torn. Cole's arm bled from a graze, but he didn't slow. The gates loomed wide, and the town bustled with evening trade. Merchants, cattlemen, gamblers. They tethered the mules by the courthouse steps. Eleanor took the box from beneath her coat. You ready? Cole asked. No, she said, but I'm going in anyway. They climbed the steps together, boots echoing on the wood. Inside, the clerk looked up, startled. We need to see the judge, Eleanor said. Do you have an appointment? She dropped the ledger on the desk. It thudded like thunder. The clerk stared, then hurried from the room. Minutes later, a thin, sharp-eyed man in a black coat entered. Judge Elroy Kessler. Greeley's man. Mrs. Hayes, he said. Marshal McAllister. You're far from your lands. Eleanor opened the ledger. We have evidence. A fraud. Murder. Conspiracy to steal half this valley. He arched a brow. Big accusations. They're backed in ink. Thomas Hayes died trying to stop it. The judge flipped through the ledger slowly, lips tightening. You understand, he said at last, that presenting this opens a trial. A public one. That's the point. Cole stepped forward. And if anything happens to us between now and then, copies go to the governor's office. Already sent by courier. The judge studied them a moment longer. Then he nodded. Very well. We'll convene at noon tomorrow. You'll testify under oath. As they left the courthouse, the sun had dipped behind the rooftops. Lanterns flickered in windows. Somewhere, music played from a saloon piano. Cole looked at Eleanor. You did it. She didn't smile. Not yet, but her shoulders eased. They walked side by side into the growing dark, the town alive around them. The truth finally on their heels instead of the past. The morning sun broke over Fort McGraw with an amber glare that turned the courthouse windows to fire. The townsfolk came in twos and threes, murmuring low as they filed into the narrow gallery. A trial wasn't common fare in these parts, not one involving names whispered with both fear and respect. Silas Greeley's shadow was long, and most men knew better than to stand in it. But today, Eleanor Hayes would not be silent. She stood near the witness table, spine straight, gloved hands resting on the ledger. Dressed in her black morning dress, her curls pinned back, she looked every inch the widow, but not broken. There was fire behind her eyes. Cole sat behind her, close enough to reach if things went sideways. He hadn't slept the night before, had spent it pacing the boarding house room, cleaning and re-cleaning his Colt Navy. He hadn't worn a badge in 3 years, but today he strapped on iron like it meant something again. Not because he trusted the law, but because he knew men like Greeley didn't play by it. Judge Kessler entered, robes fluttering behind him like a vulture's wings. His face was expressionless as he took the bench. This court is now in session, he declared. Call the first witness. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the clerk said. She stepped forward, unswerving. You understand you're under oath? The judge asked. I do. Then state your account plainly. She opened the ledger. My husband, Thomas Hayes, kept records of land transactions, honest dealings and otherwise. After his death, I discovered this journal hidden beneath the floorboards. It shows Silas Greeley forged claims, paid off surveyors, and ordered men to intimidate or kill settlers who stood in his way. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Kessler lifted a brow. Strong words, Mrs. Hayes. I have names, dates, witnesses. And how did you come to possess this journal? She met his gaze squarely. Thomas was murdered for it. Kessler tapped the gavel once. Let the record show. Continue. She recounted the day she found the ledger, how Cole McAllister had returned to warn her, how the barn had burned and men came with threats. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. Her voice was like a whetted blade, clear and cutting. The judge called Cole next. He took the stand without flinching, one hand resting on the Colt at his hip. You serve as a territorial marshal, Kessler said. Why did you resign? Cole's jaw tightened. Because the badge didn't mean much when the man behind it couldn't save anyone. And now I've got a debt to settle. He confirmed Eleanor's account, added his own witness, Everett Sloan, now dead in a ravine outside Devil's Pass. Described the ambush, the ride, the price paid to reach this courtroom. Do you have any evidence besides this ledger? Kessler asked. Only the blood it took to get here. The judge went quiet. A bailiff passed the ledger to the bench. Kessler thumbed through the pages, stopping now and then to squint, frown, mark something with a pencil. For long minutes, silence held the room hostage. Then he spoke. I'll admit this document appears damning, and it will be entered into evidence. But you're both aware Mr. Greeley has not been charged. He has not been summoned. He remains, at present, a private citizen. Eleanor stiffened. You mean he can walk free? The judge's tone was cool. Not indefinitely, but if charges are to be brought, they must be backed by more than just testimony and a ledger. I need living witnesses, county surveyors, ranchers who can be found. Until then, Mrs. Hayes, you are under court protection. You are not to leave Fort McGraw. The gavel struck once. Court adjourned until further notice. And with that, the fire dimmed. Eleanor's shoulders dropped. She hadn't expected miracles, but she'd hoped the truth would strike harder. Instead, the town buzzed with caution and fear. Men avoided her eyes. Women turned away. By dusk, word came that Silas Greeley was riding into town. Cole stood by the stable, watching the trail. He won't wait long, he said. He'll offer you a deal. I won't take it. He might not ask nice. She looked at him then, weary but sure. Let him try. And try he did. Greeley arrived just after nightfall, flanked by 2 men dressed for war. He walked into the boarding house lobby like he owned the floors beneath his boots, which in truth he nearly did. Eleanor waited at the bottom of the stairs, a pistol hidden beneath her cloak. Cole leaned against the far wall, silent, hand near his holster. Silas Greeley smiled like a man greeting old friends. Mrs. Hayes, I do declare you've caused quite a stir. She said nothing. He took off his gloves slowly. I'll say this plain. That ledger? It's dangerous. Not just to me. To every man named in it. Good men. Men with families. Eleanor's voice was cold. They should have thought of that before. Greeley's smile didn't reach his eyes. Now, I understand grief can make a woman reckless. But this doesn't have to end badly. I'm prepared to make you whole. Buy your land at triple value. Cash. Tonight. You think this is about money? I think everything is. She stepped forward. You murder my husband. That smile vanished. Greeley's tone turned to iron. You don't want to cross me, Eleanor. You know what I am. I do, she said. And I'm still standing. He stared at her a long moment, then turned to Cole. And you, the ghost of justice himself, should have stayed dead. Cole shifted, jaw clenched. Make your move, Silas. But Greeley only laughed, a sound with no humor. You made enemies in high places. I'd watch your back. And he left. The days that followed were tense. The townsfolk watched the courthouse like a hanging was coming. Greeley's men stalked the saloons. The judge postponed hearings. And Eleanor? She waited. Cole tried to keep her moving, riding the outskirts, mapping their exits, talking to people who might testify. They found one, a retired surveyor named Harlan Croft, who'd seen his signature forged on land deeds. He agreed to speak if they got him to the judge alive. Croft's homestead lay 2 hours east. They left at dawn with rifles and silence, skirting ridges and creek beds. Cole rode ahead, eyes sharp. Eleanor rode behind, the ledger tied beneath her saddle. They reached the cabin by noon. Croft opened the door with a rifle aimed between Cole's eyes. "You bring the devil with you?" he asked. "Not yet," Cole said. "But he's coming." The old man let them in. Inside, the air was stale with dust and regret. Croft poured coffee, hands trembling. "I signed one map," he said. "One. They used it to steal 50 miles of grazing land. Paid me $20 and a bottle of rot gut." "You'll testify?" Eleanor asked. He nodded. "I ain't got much time left. Might as well make it count." They saddled up fast, but halfway down the trail, gunshots cracked from the ridge. Ambush. Croft went down first, a shot to the chest. He dropped from the saddle with a grunt. Eleanor screamed. Cole spun, rifle already up, scanning the bluff. 2 men. Greeley's. He fired once, missed. The second shot took one off his horse. The other retreated into the rocks. Cole dismounted, checked Croft. The man was gasping, blood thick in his beard. "Don't waste it," he wheezed. "Take my journal." In the drawer. "Names." And then he was gone. They buried him beneath a juniper, fast and crude. In the cabin, they found the journal. More names. More proof. Eleanor stared at it. He died trying to do what's right. "We won't waste it," Cole said. They rode back under a storm-heavy sky. When they returned, the town was waiting. Greeley stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by deputies. Not his, but the judge's. The crowd parted as Cole and Eleanor dismounted. Judge Kessler met them at the door. "You have another witness?" "No," Eleanor said. "We have 2 ledgers now. Croft's journal matches mine." Kessler opened the book, eyes scanning quickly. Then he looked at Greeley. "I am issuing a warrant," the judge said, "for conspiracy, fraud, and murder." Greeley laughed. "You think I'll swing for some ink scratches?" The judge looked to his deputies. "Take him into custody." But Greeley moved first, drawing from beneath his coat. Eleanor shouted. Cole fired. The bullet struck Greeley square in the chest. He staggered, dropped the pistol, and fell to the wood with a thud. The square fell into stunned silence. Cole lowered his gun, chest heaving. "Self-defense," the judge said quietly. "I saw it." Eleanor knelt beside Greeley's body. There was no satisfaction in her face, just a long, aching relief. It was over. Or at least this part was. That night, the town was quiet. Too quiet. Cole found Eleanor standing behind the boarding house, staring up at the stars. "They'll come," she said softly. "Greeley's men. His backers. The names in those books." "I know." She turned to him. "But we did what was right." He stepped closer. "We're not done, Eleanor. There's a valley worth saving. People worth fighting for." She looked at him long. "Are you staying?" she asked. "I was hoping you'd ask me to." She smiled then, tired but real. "I've got land. And fences that need mending. And someone's got to build the roof Thomas never finished. I'm handy with a hammer," he said. They stood in the hush, the moon climbing above the hills. And though the road ahead would be hard, uncertain, and likely bloody, they faced it together. No longer running. No longer hiding. Just 2 souls, burned and battered, who'd chosen to fight for something good. And chosen each other in the wreckage. Cole took her hand. And with that, they turned back toward the valley, where spring was coming and a new kind of war would begin. Not for revenge, but for hope.